Is it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on.
Yeah. Good morning and warm welcome to our eminent speakers and delegates joining today's webinar from across the country and overseas. It's my pleasure to welcome you to MART's webinar on reskilling rural India during COVID times, employment opportunities and challenges. I am Pankaj Mishra, your host for today's webinar. MART has been at the forefront of creating and disseminating knowledge to the industry since last 27 years. Today's webinar is fourth in the series of webinars organized by MART during COVID times over last 2 months, which has received overwhelming response from the corporates and academia and other sectors. In today's webinar, we are bringing brilliant minds of the industry on this platform who will share their amazing insights on how industry, government and development professionals can explore reskilling and upskilling opportunities during COVID times and prepare well for strategies to equip their workforce with new skill sets and create new employment opportunities in rural India to unlock economic revival during COVID times. MART's recent Pan India study on migrant workers revealed that as many as 25% migrant workers will stay back in villages and they will explore livelihood opportunities and agri and allied sectors, which has the sector which and or they will start their own businesses in the wake of agri reforms and the economic impetus announced by the government. Employment opportunities for the rural workforce through reskilling in trades which are relevant to the rural economy or force them again to go back to the cities for wage and job employment in urban clusters. Today's webinar will be centered around addressing such pertinent questions. Now let me brief about the format of the webinar. We will have the brief presentation from eminent speakers who will share their experiences, learnings and mantras on reskilling and generating new opportunities in the livelihood sector, and that will be followed by Q&A session. So the participants can put their questions in the Q&A box or the chat box during the webinar, and we will keep on taking them once the speakers complete their initial deliberations in first 60 to 70 minutes. Now I would like to introduce and welcome Mr. Shantikam Hajarika, who will be the moderator for today's session. Mr. Hajarika is an alumnus of BITS Pilani and IIM Ahmedabad. He is also the ex-chairman of Board of Secondary Education Assam, and he is also one of the founding directors of the Assam Institute of Management. Over to Mr. Hajarika now.
Hello, everyone. A hearty and well sanitized good morning to all of you. And thank you, Pankaj, for that introduction. It's indeed a pleasure to be part of this webinar on reskilling rural India during the COVID times, hard times we are all facing, and employment opportunities and challenges being organized by MART, the brainchild of Pradeep Kashyap, the father of rural marketing in India, and of course, some of the most path-breaking and innovating rural development ideas that have been there. I think we'll be having a panelist, and we are today lined up 6 panelists to speak. And after that, we'll be having the question and answer sessions where I'm sure there'll be a lot of interesting questions available. The speakers that we have lined up today include Mr. Dilip Chenoy, the Secretary General of FICCI, Mr. Vijay Sahu from Reliance Industries, Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Jha from 2.5 NVG Essilor International, Mr. Vishal Singh Amrawat, Chief Operating Officer of Be-Able, Mr. Neeraj Agarwal, who is the CEO of Rural Choice Skill Academy. So setting the tone for today's discussion, I feel that the myriads of challenges which are facing India today, the most basic problem that India faces is the problem of the rural poor. We are all aware that agriculture accounts for hardly 15% of our GDP, while it absorbs almost more than 40% of our total workforce. Now, this mismatch draws out the stark reality that bulk of our rural poor exists in a very stressed socio-economic environment. And then on top of that, due to the COVID pandemic, we have seen large number of daily wage earners trudging back to their original rural bases and adding further to the rural stress that I have already said earlier. And as it appears, the COVID pandemic is here to stay, and it will be there for some time. And even if it is controlled, even if it's subsidized fully in the near future, I don't think there will be any going back to business as usual, which also means that many of the returning migrants, as Pankaj just said, will not be able to go back to the urban areas where they were earlier earning their livelihood. Which means that we'll also have to see that in the already stressed rural front, we'll have to find out how we can provide sustainable livelihood to the additional amount of people who are going to add to the problem that is already in existence. And I think we have to search for what we call sustainable employment generation for this poor. And it only, I think, in the rural setup possible through what you can say, micro entrepreneurship in the rural environment. And by micro entrepreneurship, what I mean is a form of self-employment where you may have, say, one or two other co-workers to assist you. So it's, in fact, we can say it's almost a, say, nano-entrepreneurship type of thing, because micro-entrepreneurship has been defined slightly in a bigger dimension. Now, the COVID pandemic has brought in a lot of what I think permanent changes that are going to take place. And it is also going to, I think, change the development mode that we have undertaken. So what I feel that this nano-entrepreneurship that I'm talking about in the rural socio-economic environment will be something which has to emerge. And this is, I think, the first thing that has to emerge in the context of our overall development scenario. Now, I personally feel that in the rural setup, a lot of opportunities for nano-entrepreneurship exist. There are a lot of gaps in the development process. You know that in the entire supply chain of reaching out to the rural or to bring out from the rural side, there are a lot of gaps that requires to be fulfilled. Then we have seen a lot of last mile connectivity problems in the rural areas, because of which many of the developmental efforts have not actually given the outcome that is required at the ground level. Then there are a lot of rural needs, healthcare needs, sanitation needs, education needs, other basic service needs. I think these also are to be treated as opportunities where through the form of micro-entrepreneurship we can really meet them. And then every region has their specific needs of even goods and services which can be met locally. And for this, again, we have to go for this concept of self-employment and developing some micro-industries, nano-industries, which only produce for the local areas. So this is, whenever we think of this micro-entrepreneurship or nano-enterprises, as I'm talking about, I think the first thing that is required will be the skilling aspect. I think the World Economic Forum has also identified skilling as one of the primary requirements in the country. And when the development process, we said we have to start from the rural poor. I think we have to start the skilling process also from the rural poor. And this rural poor skilling effort has to be what I call a bottom-up approach. It cannot be a one size fits all. Every region having its own local issues, own socio-economic culture, everything different. It has to originate, although we may have a broad perspective view from the top, it has to originate at the local region. And that is where I feel that all the agencies, the corporate sector, the various agencies, they have got to reach out to the rural poor and then identify what are the opportunities, what are the scopes, and how it can be brought up. So this is, I think, is the biggest challenge that is facing us today. And this is how I would like to set the mode of discussion for the other panelists to talk about. And I am sure the wide spectrum that we are covering today, we have got today people sitting in right from Ranikhet to Bangalore to Delhi to Bombay to Guwahati in Assam to Bhubaneswar. It's a quite wide spectrum with different perspectives they're going to bring. And I am sure that they will be able to bring this aspect that I just set the case on the beginning. And we will now request that we start the discussion today initially with a brief presentation by Mr. Ramesh Jena, the Chief Executive Officer of MART, who will be making a small presentation, after which we will have the Mr. Dilip Chenoy, who will be making his presentation. So Mr. Ramesh Jena, will you please now make the presentation?
Yeah, thank you, Santigam sir. Good morning to all, respected all panelists and participants. It's my privilege to highlight some of MART's cases for employment generation. In last 27 years of our inception, we have promoted millions of livelihoods across the country. So in this forum, I will highlight 2 to 3 cases for large employment generation. Those can be used for scaling off in other areas. So I'll make a presentation, brief presentation. Yeah. Yeah. This is the cases of self-employment. Most of our interventions are the self-employment. This is a collecting marketing intervention. If you see that, because in rural areas, the primary producers or the collectors of the non-timber forest produce, they mostly dealing with the raw producers. If you see, this is a typical product pyramid in villages, where around 90% of the communities, they are dealing with the raw produce. And 6 to 7% they are into minimum value addition or semi-finished products, and 2 to 3% are into the finished product. And those who are dealing with the raw produce, they are having high volume, low skill is required, and huge market potentiality. And if they will involve for the only for the selling, the trading related activity, there is a possibility for getting 10 to 15% of their incremental income compared to the base price. And if they go for the semi-finished product and minimum value addition kind of product, then these are margin is a little more, but on branded product, due to this thing, high competition. And if you will, they will deal for the finished product, it's a high competition are there for these communities. It's very difficult. Based on our experience, these individually that the communities, they are either they are the group of the individuals or individual or the group of the person, either for the different kind of CBOs. They are selling the individual level, so that's why they are getting exploitation by the middleman. That's why they offer to the lesser price, and mostly they are into the no or low value addition related activity. And due to this thing, that the utilization of their revolving funds are very limited, and no standardization kind of thing. And particularly though they are depending upon the village level traders and town level trader, they are cheating into many fold, either in the owing scale and in the price. So this is a based on this experience, MART started since last started this intervention called collective marketing. This is a call as a aggregation model in the last 18 years. Before, we have started a pilot intervention in one of the districts in Odisha with a multilateral project. Then after that, that has replicated with many states as well. So this collective marketing model is basically identifying to the marketable surplus, because after the consumption, whatever the produce is available for marketing, identifying the gaps and constant in this marketing process and market-led solution. And it will be assess the needs and capacity of these communities intervention to make the collective marketing intervention in the field at the successful. So in this, there are 4 to 5 steps in this process. One, at least need to map to the product-based clusters. And once this covering up 2 to 3 villages or even more, then there is a possibility for ensuring to the scale. That is the collectivization. If they will involve in this process, then there is a possibility for getting 5 to 10% of the incremental price compared to their base price. And if you leave the second step, they will involve in the value addition without changing the form, like storing, sorting, cleaning, grading kind of things. Then there is a possibility for getting 5 to 10%. And after that, if they will directly link with the, because they are having the volume, if they will directly link with the bigger players, town level traders or processing house, so there is a possibility for getting 5% more. And if after that, if they will link with the institutional buyer, additional 5%.
Can you share a PPT?
Hello, Pankaj, is it audible?
Yeah.
Please share your PPT, Ramesh. We are not able to see your PPT presentation. Please share your screen, please.
No, it was not there. No, I think so.
Yeah, not to worry. I think you carry on. Yeah, now it's there.
Okay. Yeah.
Sure.
You can just quickly go through them, because I think already we are going to into somebody's time.
Then the benefit due to these interventions, then we have created a competitive environment at the village level, introduced the fair weighing system, because earlier the middleman, they're cheating in their weighing related activities, then increase the volume of the produce, then extend to reach into a remunerative market. Due to this intervention, MART has successfully, this started in 1 state and replicated into 7 states, including the Maharashtra, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand kind of states, and covering of a 60,000 women, and with a turnover goes to 70 crores with an incremental, on an average incremental price of 18% additional. And then another cases, successful cases of this project where MART is into the ensuring the livelihood of a rehabilitation assignment. The major objective of this project is to only exclusively for the self-employment, and our target is to ensure the covering of 100% households and doubling their income, baseline income, 5 years. So in this process, what we followed, that the process we followed, that first mobilizing, because displaced communities, they are into different kind of mindset, mobilizing them, then sharing the concept, sharing, rapport building with these communities. Then after that, identifying to the alternative livelihood option. MART is having a different model. So always we focus into a market-led intervention, then supply-led, then based on that group formation and strengthening this group, training and exposure, selection of the potential activity by the communities, preparation of the business plan, handling support towards activity initiation and market facilitation. So that in this process, we are promoting this livelihood for this, and these are the steps where either identification of the group-based activity, individual activity, then those who are the unemployed youth, building their skill, and then facilitation for starting up any kind of self-employment activity, institutional linkages, and convergence with various departments. And this is a case study, successful case study of that project, where one group covering up 10 members involve only a period of 13 months, and their turnover goes to 17.6 lakhs. And only they have facilitated, participated into various kind of exhibition and mela, and that profit is around 35%. in the first picture, they are into community mobilization, then imparting to the training, then storing this product, quality, ensuring the sorting and storing kind of thing, the installation of machinery. They are into processing, then displaying this product, and then participating into exhibition. And we have developed a brand called Manohar. And apart from that, also we have promoted individual various kind of activities, starting from floriculture, strawberry, to different kind of environmental friendly plate making, shal leaf, siali leaf kind of activities. And the third case study is a value chain intervention. MART is implementing a pilot project. This is a project implementing by Odisha Livelihood Mission under NRLM. Our objective is to value chain intervention and market facilitation of medicinal plant product. This is a covering of 13 blocks and 6 districts in covering of 79 gram panchayat. So we have formed 90 producer groups covering up 9,954 Mahila Kishans for this collection of wild collection and cultivation of selected medicinal plant. In this process, we have successfully linked 800 metric ton of this medicinal plant. These are the product. 4 products are the wildlife collection, and 5 products are the cultivation. Then this is a process of this value addition, collection, aggregation, steaming, and the marketing of this produce. And also we have successfully developed certain knowledge document like for the SOP, POP, and with training material to building the capacity of the target communities, and also successfully linked with various program and schemes. And this is the, I'll take only 2 minutes for this thing. This is a basically talks about that what kind of livelihood option for the reverse migrant, because now this is a really challenging state, that is a headache for all state governments and central government. One state government approached us for developing a concept note that because MART has conducted a study that findings said that 20 million migrant workers out of 497 million total workforce. And this study findings said that 25% of these migrant workers, they want to stay at the native place. So on an average, prior to their lockdown, their average income was 11,000, and they have their remittance per month was 6,900. That after the discussion, we asked that if suppose you want to stay back at your native place, what is your expectation? They said that 6,000 if we will able to generate, then we can stay comfortable with the family. So for this is a model that 2 kind of intervention we have suggested to the government. One is that either for the hilly area, forest area, or the tribal area, that different kind of activity can be suggested, particularly for the NTAP, horticulture, goat rearing, backward poultry, and non-farm based activity, and the plain area and coastal area, mostly into the agriculture, horticulture, pisciculture, dairy, and non-farm based activity. But keeping in mind 2 things. One, that whether these communities are their readiness to engage in traditional livelihoods of their native place, and second, the preference for the alternative livelihood option. And these are the activity can be taken up for non-farm based activity, farm based, and off-farm based activity. And the approach may be either rapid assessment of this market assessment of the study, selection of right income generation activity, market led, then segregation, targeting, and implementing skill build up and cluster for level income generation activity. For proactive stage for achieving this thing, first is that creating a opportunity awareness, then preparation of a district-wise database of the returnees, absorption into convergence of their schemes, ensuring basic social security, engaging social and private sector. So these are the main cases. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ramesh. I think this will just set the tone for the other speakers who are going to come. Now, I would like to call on Mr. Vijay Sahu, who is the Group President of Strategic HR at Reliance Industries Limited, where he directly works with the chairman, Mr. Ambani, and in developing the HR strategies, providing leadership and building leadership capabilities of all the existing group businesses of RIL. So I'm sure he will be able to definitely give a very different input in the current discussion. So I would request Mr. Vijay Sahu, please make your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hazarika, respected Mr. Kashyapji, Ramesh Jana, Pankaj, Dilipji, Mr. Vishal, Mr. Neeraj, and Mr. Arkarat. Actually, after seeing the presentation, it appeared to me it is very researched and all the solutions are inbuilt in that. So since Mart is saying what needs to be done, the skills is all about how it needs to be done and the know-how of doing it and the experience and the proficiency of doing it. So skill is about doing, knowledge about knowing. So knowledge part very eminently Mart team has handled. I actually have no additions in that. In regard to skills part, before I go there, in corporations, sir, in all my learning and training, we figured it out. We call it not skills, not knowledge. We call it competencies. So we say competencies is knowing, that is knowledge, doing, that is skills, and willingness to know, willingness to do, that is attitude. So the knowledge part is covered here. Now the doing part, the person who needs employment has to do it, and before doing, he needs kind of communication about the knowledge, which the government can provide the vehicle. Dilip has been earlier the founder, CEO of NSDC. He led the foundation of skills movement in this country. And he has been in different kind of industrial associations and educational institutions as a leader. Now he leads the largest, most respected industry association of the country. So, you know, he will say much broader things, but as regards as I am concerned, I look at it, how do you actually create a platform that the people who intend to know, they know, and the people who intend to benefit, they learn how to do it. And how do we enable that initial kind of initiation of them to start doing and increasingly accelerate that process and opportunities for them to do. Today, what is the problem? There is no problem. The biggest problem is actually the opportunity. If suddenly out of 160 million migrants, the data here Rameshji spoke about is something like 25% of them have gone back actually to the villages. It is a super overload of people and a kind of overload of loss of income. Now all the Gulf countries are sending back people. Kuwait said they will send back 8 lakhs people. So as we are talking, we have a mission called Mo Sahai. There are 60-70 volunteers are working. They're mapping actually all these people who are within the country migrating back to village, and from overseas 7-8 countries they're coming back to India. Where they're going, what are they doing, which skills, which cluster. So we have a lot of data. But the person who has to actually walk the path, he has certain skills. Now for those skills, there are no jobs in the villages. Now that's why he migrates. Now villages need certain skills. Those skills nobody wants to learn and practice. So that is actually the disconnect. To understand the farmer, I have been working on this mission last 5-6 months now outside my job of very tasking job of 10-12 hours per day. I work on this mission all Saturdays, Sundays. After working with laborers, farmers, I actually call them. I have taken a target of speaking to 2 farmers and 2 laborers every day. So I joined the team from our contact center to call them. I have actually understood what a farmer is and what he wants. So unless he's willing to know, willing to do, even if we superimpose all the resources of the country, actually it's not going to benefit him. So since I have 8 minutes, I'll just, I have written a poem. I'll share that with you because in 8 minutes, I cannot cover that poem. That will take 2 minutes to read. But that actually talks about the farmer. Let me quickly try read that. And that tells what the farmer wants. So from there, we'll derive what skills we need. Let me see if I can quickly get it. I'm a farmer. I toil in the field, hot summer, torrential rain, keep sweating, sow seeds, grow crops, feed your family, my nation. Elder son is a soldier, fights on the border, climbs mountains, walks on the snow, carries heavy weapons, no proper food, no shelters, sharp eyes on enemy, fights till the end, protects our border, our mission, keeping nation safe. Younger one, a migrant, runs your factory, builds the road, builds buildings, loads the trucks, cooks your food, drives your car, your children to school, tiny tin shed is his home, one dry roti, some onions, little dal, tap water, sleeps on the ground among 10 others. Parents old and sick have stories to tell, fed the nation 40 years, lots of pride, lots of peace, lots of gratitude for people and country, for Bapuji and Baba Saheb, for Nehruji and Netaji, for Shastriji's Jai Jawan, Jai Kishan, free India, free children, free nation. Generations after generation, we feed, we fight, we love the nation. My uncle lost his leg in 1962 war, wheelchair, adventure stories, kids love. We too will fight in the border, broad smile, proud soldier. Other uncle lost his hands in the flour mill, no regrets. His brother grew wheat, he processed to feed, lost his hands, feeding the nation. My aunt feeds him now. Grandchildren happy, playing on the village road, swimming in the river, climbing the trees. Some will run factories and some will be farmers, some soldiers be. Women at home, meek and weak, veiled faces, dry eyes, serve family, still with a smile. Our dreams are small. Grandchildren in school, our girls be doctors, boys engineers, one a scientist, one major in army, one a farmer with tools. Parents get medicine, our women get nutrition, our children come home in summer, our family have a smile. That's our desire, that's our dream. We merrily sing the song, we feed our nation, we run our factories, we protect the border, we keep the nation safe, happy and healthy. We are farmers, we are workers, we are soldiers, we love our nation. So this is a farmer and this is what the farmer wants. I have taken 7 minutes, I have 1 minute left. Now sir, just see 3 generations. One is a soldier, one is a farmer, one is a factory worker. You know sir what factory worker needs the skills. You know sir soldier what skills he needs. You now know farmers what skills they needs. That our friend Rameshji said farmer ka skills requirement based on his new thinking of employment. Now sir, that factory worker has come back to the village. He needs reskilling and upskilling and kind of migration in the skills. Now sir, the next generation is coming. The next generation, they want engineers, doctors, army major, and farmer. Farmer with the tools. So farmer with the tools, you need a kind of skill for his children that Dilipji can research and see how Israel farmers, Netherlands farmers, American farmers, what tools they use. That is what the village farmer need. You may be thinking I am actually hypothesizing, making it poetic. It is not. That's what he needs. Farmer doesn't go to the muddy paddy field anymore. I am from a village. Now the second is how the education platform, which is so weak today, which was not in my time. I come from a village. Currently, nobody like me can come out of a village because the education is destroyed. So what skills are needed in education, in healthcare, in elderly care and sanitation? Those are the skills required for the rural area. I have completed, sir, 33 minutes, 1 minute I have taken extra. I'll wait for question answer. Thank you, sir, so much.
Thank you, Mr. Sahu. I think it was a quite erudite and I think broad overview, which is also give a very different perspective. Now we have Mr. Dilip Chenoy with us. He is currently the Secretary General of FICCI, Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And he was also the Managing Director and CEO of National Skill Development Corporation. So I think he's very well suited to make some very positive contribution to today's session. So I would invite Mr. Dilip Chenoy to please make your presentation. Mr. Chenoy.
Thank you, Mr. Hazarika. Pankaj Mishra, Partner Mart, Ramesh Jaina, CEO Mart, Mr. Vijay Sahu, Group President, HR, Reliance Industries Limited, Sanjeev Kumar Jha from Essilor International, Mr. Vishal Singh Amaravat from Be Able, and Neeraj Agarwal from Rural Shores. And of course, I understand that Mr. Kashyap is holed up in Ranikhet, so a very warm welcome to him. So, you know, I've been given a set of questions to actually answer in my initial remarks. So I will try and do that. First, of course, we have heard that the COVID pandemic is a humanitarian crisis. It impacts both lives and livelihoods across the globe. I think, but COVID in the Indian context has actually enabled us to do multiple things that we thought was never possible. First, you know, if I just take the example that the Prime Minister refers to, we had negligible production of masks, ventilators, and sanitizers. And in fact, it is the rural economy, the self-help groups that pivoted, that they were making textile and other apparel, that they started making masks, and they started making sanitizers, and they started making PPE. And this was done independent of a skilling initiative. So I think the one thing that comes out is we need to create demand for products and services within India and exports, and the jobs will follow. So all our attempts should be, and in the presentation that we just saw, there was a demand aggregation, marketing aggregation, etc. That is the way we need to go forward. The second thing it has done, it has fundamentally redefined the new work order. 160 crore kids are actually learning online, school online. The 28 million college and university students have to do online. And technology is transforming the way that we work. People are working from home. People are actually doing a lot of interactions on platforms, virtual platforms like we are doing today. So digital is going to change. If last decade, that is 2010, 2020, was the decade of consumption, this decade is going to be the decade of creativity. And we have to actually enable every rural person or every 130 crore plus persons in India to be able to get onto the creative platform. And therefore, the three things that we actually need to do at the rural level, through the common service centers, through the panchayats, through whatever it is first is teach them the basics of design. Because, and this can be done online. Design is not something that requires physical contact. The second thing, and I'll take another D for that example, is digital marketing. Because if we can put the local products onto a digital platform, and there are many digital platforms here, that we can actually enable that to happen. And I think Rural Shores colleague will talk about how do you create rural BPOs that also do and enable the whole marketing. Can India become the back office? You know, we are the back office of the world. Can rural India become the back office of urban India? And the third thing, which is actually playing very important role now, is delivery, because we are moving out from contactless, shopping experience, and therefore the last mile delivery and logistics is very, very important. Today, we take the example of e-commerce, but the local kirana, the local village store, and the local products would require local last mile delivery, and the potential is immense. And we need to create the digital infrastructure that will enable us to do this design service training, the digital marketing, and connecting the delivery kind of scenario. The second thing which I would like to say is that if you notice today on the internet, there are very, very many local people, chefs, dance, artisans, crafts people, exercise people. You take the service and there is a local person who's putting up a video to teach other people the same thing, and they're monetizing it. There is a story of an English literature student in a remote area going on to doing webinars on the net, charging 500 rupees to teach people how to look and which read English literature. And similarly, Bijay Sahu's poem reminded me that the people are actually doing it for local this thing. There is a new method to actually collect and deliver news. The entire media industry is actually changing. So if we enable this digital connectivity, then local creativity will blossom, and they can do that. And like Y2K enabled us to take an advantage in the IT industry, this COVID lockdown can make India the creative capital of the world going forward. And then everything is moving digital. Education, training, everything. So you can create content, and you can create content for beauty parlors, you can create content for dhabas, you can create content for retail stores, you can actually create content for teaching. We can have millions of Baijus in local languages and all other things. Like you go back, you need to help them to teach design, digital marketing, and digital enablement. The second is that the 160 crore kids who are there, right? And when this lockdown continues, even post-lockdown, till the vaccine and everything comes in, there's going to be a combination of physical and digital. It's going to be a phygital world, and this is a phrase that I've started using. And you need local people who will help enable local children to understand the courses, to actually support them, which actually happens there. And then you see what is happening very interestingly. Agriculture is the sector. And in the opening presentation, we talked about agriculture. Agriculture is a sector where you have huge surplus production. That leads to two challenges. One, for example, milk. If you're not getting remuneration of milk, it's not good to throw it on the road, but we should get local people to process and make value-added milk products, and then enable them to create the cold chains and all of that, like Bijay talked about, so that we can value add in this. And the second is, there is a surplus of agricultural production. Now, a lot of surplus of agricultural production is being stored in the open field, and if there's rain or something, it will be impacted. So the government has enabled a 1 lakh crore investment in agricultural farm gate infrastructure. If we can get, you mentioned in your presentation, Rameshji, about this, getting people to collaborate. So can get village level to collaborate, to create infrastructure, to store these products, and how do we enable that to happen? And very significantly at the grassroots level, there has been a change in the way the agriculture produce is being marketed and sold. And unfortunately, the government does not have a machinery to actually convey down to the people the changes in the Essential Commodities Act, the changes in the APMC Act, and what it means for the local farmer and the local food processor organizations and others that are there. Like in the solar space, we have the solar mitras. We need to create and we have the banking correspondence in the financial sector. We need to create, in the agriculture sector, Skill Council can actually enable this to do that. We need to create millions of agricultural mitras who will actually communicate this, enable entities to actually come together and go forward. And then we need to be able to transform, right? So we need trainers, like I said, to do this agricultural training. We need, transformers who will help transform this from agricultural produce into connecting to the market and going forward. So and the whole skill space is going to transform. So currently we are thinking of long hours of courses. We have to actually now think of how we can do get micro credits, add on to these credits, and then do a course. We have to see how we can use the spread of digital. It is the first time in India, two things have happened. First, the internet usage in rural India has exceeded urban India. And second, the amount of data consumed in rural India has exceeded the urban India. And both these, we need to keep pushing this going forward so that we see this whole skilling ecosystem pivot on the traditional input-based model to an output-based model, etc. Now, there is the other question that was asked to me, what do we do with the migrant workers? And the initial point that was made there and the survey that you had done was that a significant part of the migrant workers want to get back. 56% of them want to get back to the jobs. So the first thing we need to do is we need to actually enable that to happen, because if they don't get back to their jobs, they won't earn incomes and they won't be part of the consumption economy. So, you know, Bijay Sahu talked of that app which we had. Many states are talking about the app. We have to collectively work to do two things. One is to convey the message that it is safe to go back to work. And if you follow the SMS protocol, that is the safe distancing, mask and sanitization, you are not going to get impacted. The second thing is that we have to say that, look, initially when the COVID broke out, we did not know the mortality rates, we did not know the infection rates. But if 90% just requires simple hospital treatment, not even hospital treatment, you can actually do it at home. The mortality rate is less than, you know, accidents, less than tuberculosis and all of that. We got to remove the fear from the individual. These are the two prerequisites for getting people back to work, to getting the consumption economy going and getting the creative economy going. And if you look at the other aspects, I talked about digital marketing. Now, where do we focus? So we need to focus on the traditional clusters where we need to enable them in providing livelihood opportunities, connecting them to the digital marketplace, creating digital marketplaces for them. And, you know, it is very interesting. Earlier, before COVID, you had a family where the student went to school and the parents actually did handloom work and they were isolated from the digital universe. Now, the student is being connected to the digital universe and he is actually being trained in a lot of stuff which was not available to him earlier. So very simple thing to do as part of the course curriculum of this, if they just give you one thing, take a product, get a photograph, describe the product and upload it on the net to create a marketplace, that will actually add billions, I mean, not billions, but millions, hundreds of millions products on the e-marketplace. And this transformation can be done through this simple skilling opportunity dovetail with the training at school. So we have to scale it. It has to be done at speed and scale to use the digital network. The second thing that has happened is that traditionally the skilling organizations were supposed to work from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6:30. Now you virtually have a 24/7 opportunity through the digital platform to actually enable that to happen. And you also have the opportunity to curate some of the world's best content and, you know, provide it. And, you know, a lot of, now you also have online simultaneously interpretation or translation facilities available. So you can get the best of the world and deliver it to people in India. So we can actually remove the productivity gap or reduce the productivity gap that enables it to happen. Now, there is a big challenge. The whole skilling ecosystem is actually impacted much badly than even many of the traditional industries. In fact, the skilling system is in the category of tourism, you know, sports, gyms, etc., because the skilling infrastructure cannot open. So they have half completed batches, they have half assessed batches or assessed batches without this thing. They have new batches which have to come, which they can't come, and there's a huge financial crisis. So we need to look at taking all the skilling organizations, looking at what they need to do a COVID bridge fund, do a rescheduling of their entire thing, and make sure that the investments that they have made don't go to waste. And how do you create a physical plus a digital infrastructure to actually enable this to happen? Today, like you are allowed telemedicine, like you've allowed online courses, like you've allowed a lot of other things to actually, whether it's facilitating e-commerce or e-pharmacies, etc. We need to build a new skilling, and it's going to be primarily digital infrastructure to enable to rebuild the rural landscape through a new perspective. So what is the new perspective? And I'll conclude with this. If I look at the new perspective, it has few very specific elements. First, let us focus on the 3Ds, not the democracy, demand, and typically what the Prime Minister uses, but design, digital marketing, and delivery. Can we look at the 3Cs? Creating, leveraging the creative economy through development of content, supporting course delivery at the local level, and converting the agri into processed food, and converting what is a waste surplus into a productive thing going forward. And finally, focusing a lot of the trainers, a lot of the teachers who are now present in their, they were present offline. You could never get them online to train them because it was not there. Now they have to be online. So for trainers, for tutors, and for the entire transformational agents, the agri mitras, the other people on the ground, can we develop, qualification packs and digital learning systems going forward? And there was a question which was asked to me, what is the role of the sector skill councils? The sector skill councils have to be first recognized by government. Over the past few months, there has been a dilution of their roles and responsibilities, but they are actually going virtual. They're developing virtual content. They're getting virtual trainers, virtual assessors, and they have to create a new set of qualification packs, a new set of digital systems where they offer microcredits, and then they transform the entire country, not necessarily the rural country, because rural India has the potential to become the granary to the world, got the back office to the world, and actually create a difference and promote the, increase the GDP of India. So those are my initial remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chenoy. I think that has been a brilliant presentation and giving the overall perspective of the whole very thing out here. So I would now request Mr. Neeraj Agarwal, who is currently the CEO of Rural Shows Skills Academy, and prior to that, he was the Senior Vice President Development of the NIIT Yuva Jyoti and the Project Director Affirmative Action of the NIIT Institute. So, Mr. Agarwal, the floor is yours, please.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. This really, in the beginning, you have created another picture so people can start connecting with things. So I will be sharing a bit of the last mile, as I was talking about last mile part, where we started people. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'm so glad that there are about 145 people attending. So the essential thing is that the Rural Shores founders had started thinking on the lines of employment in the rural areas back in 2007. And Rural Shores business with rural BPOs got started in 2009. And it has now expanded across 8 states and 13 villages. Of course, it has the potential to get to the whole country, all the states. So that potential is a challenge that we have been struggling with last 10 years. So it is sustaining the employment in the villages with typical business ups and downs that is happening. But the biggest thing is something that I have experienced myself being in the training organization 30 years now. So in that, I've seen that people in the villages, they're not lesser than the urban counterparts. It's just that basic education and their whole set has not gotten developed. And of course, now this is the COVID time that has given the opportunity to let the technology be used aggressively. And as Elechana was highlighting that the numbers of people who are using the internet on the mobile is larger in the rural area than. So that aspect is what we are now focusing on. So just to give a little background. So the whole process that we started was looking at the domestic call center. This is basically the local language. So most of the people that we were hiring from the villages only. So those people we were training to ensure that they can understand the business skills, which is now communicating with the customers. Of course, they're using their own language, but they have to read the material that has come from the client, let's say Airtel or Jio or, some insurance companies and so on. So all of that, they had to pick up the content that was coming to them and then have a communication with the rural people that they were serving. In that process, they needed that training. That's what we did. And, overall, it has kind of grown now to 8 states, like I said. And there are quite a few people that we have trained. So in the last, I think, 10 years, we have trained about 15,000 rural youth to be able to do these things. And the interesting thing is that once we started a BPO in a village where we were doing the services, people who were from the village and had gone to the city to work, they started coming back because sector. So the essential element of the founders was that the sector, which is in the country right now in the GDP sense about 54%, and while the people are in rural are at 67% population, and the village, the rural agriculture thing is only at 14-15% of the GDP. So the service sector desperately needs these people, and the salaries in the cities are going really, really high. And that part we can truly address if we can get the rural youth properly get trained for the service sectors. In fact, many more service sectors can start moving. And I am quite aware, as we are, working with many other, that there are many insurance and finance companies who are seeking to have local people do their sales. So insurance and finance, of course, those services that they provide. And another part which is growing really, really rapidly, and it came out in the presentation also, that the e-commerce side, e-commerce side can use those artists who have been doing the older stuff that they were doing, and as they start understanding the newer technology, they can improve upon it so that it becomes viable for the population across the world, not just India, across the world. And those e-commerce platforms are giving opportunities for them to register as sellers onto those entities. And to that portion, right now, we are enabling a set of people in certain villages who initially will find all these sellers, but also ensure that the rural youth, rural population can buy those things that are available on the e-commerce platform. They are not stuck with what is available in the local villages. That way, they will be able to kind of really expand their life. Yeah. So there is another component here which I thought I would share, that there is a large FMCG company which was using the rural women to actually do the sales and marketing in small towns, and they wanted to keep moving. And these women were actually living in the villages, but they were moving to the cities and coming back. They would go in the morning and come back in the evening. And what we did is we trained these women. So we improved the training so that they could also do this not only in the cities, but in the villages. That is one part. Second is they were given mobile smartphones. So they said, we can't use these smartphones. So we taught them how they can. And once they learned the basics, which is very simple, but they learned it. And when they learned it, it became like the main thing that they would, go through. For example, this COVID time that FMCG company had to shut down for a period for about 2 to 3 months. We converted all the training that we were delivering to them online. and they were able to learn all of this on the mobile phone. So with that, their efficiency of connecting with the customers, following the guidelines of COVID, of the social distancing, not touching, and so on, and wearing the right set of clothes, that they learned in addition to the product process and all of these things. And interestingly, one thing I just want to highlight here, that one of the ladies so there are groups. So every community, some 8-10 of them will go. So one of them takes on the role of a team leader in that group. And while she is probably doing better in terms of the marketing and the sales, but what I found is that she had a human side, because of which everybody else was listening to her more than generally. So there were many other people who were better and all of those things, but she was very kind and very compassionate in how she connected, because of which she became a team leader. And slowly over the years, 3-4 years, we've seen that all those ladies who were becoming team leaders have now become independent vendors, because this FMC company. Just a minute now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please go.
Okay. Yeah. I thought I will just tell the story. So, yeah. So they have become like entrepreneurs. They have become, because they are able to get the women who will be able to participate. So most of these are in the age range of 30 to 45, and they come into working and doing all these things because the children have become older. So that's the part that we have been doing, and so they don't need to migrate. And all the people that we are anyway training in the BPO part don't have to migrate. They actually come back and work in those villages. So so as you probably just figured out from the discussion, that the internet and devices are much needed for the rural youth, and that's the driver, but it's primarily an enabler. On top of the enabler, the training and the skilling is critical, essential, and that is now becoming more possible, because earlier the teachers in the villages were not so, let's say, well informed or knowledge of the skills, and people didn't listen to them. Now, but with the online thing opening up, a lot of them will start getting interactions like this session that we're doing. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And listening to me. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agarwal. I think we are, as usual, as running badly out of time. So I would now request Mr. Vishal Singh Amrawat, who is currently the CEO of Beable, to make his presentation. And if you can make it within about 7-8 minutes, I shall be very happy, so that we can have sufficient time for question and answers. Please.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Hazarika, and Thank you, Mr. Hazarika, and thank you, Mart, for organizing this webinar. Very important subject now, and giving me the opportunity to join as a panelist with Mr. Dilip Shenoy, Mr. Sahu, Pradeep sir, Neeraj Agrawal, Mr. Hazarika, Mr. Ramesh Jaina, and Mr. Pankaj. So, Beable is a part of Basics Social Enterprise Group, and we were the first training partner chosen by NSDC when NSDC got formed in 2009 December. And since then, we have trained around more than 3 lakh candidates, and our major focus since inception was towards providing informal sector skilling. So since beginning, we are focusing on micro enterprise development, agriculture skilling, and creating some models, creating innovative models in rural areas where we can promote non-migratory employment generation. So this disruption happened due to COVID, actually has given us a pause to sit and rethink on a lot of fronts, like social front, behavioral, economical, technology, and also push a reset button of migration. So the study already made by Mart, and Beable also conducted a survey with around 4,200 reverse migrants in May and in the first week of June month. So the data what Mr. Ramesh shared
are the similar. The findings are just similar, but I will share little more data here. So interestingly, the 60% of the migrant workforce, the reverse migrant workforce, belongs to the age of -30. So they all are below 30 age, and this is the target basically we have, and that says a lot about need of skilling, reskilling, and how the workforce is placed. And the interesting data was like the 52% of those reverse migrants are at least metric pass. So again, there is a scope. So we can say that the literacy has gone up in last 20 years. And one more data. So 17% of the reverse migrant belong to the white collar jobs like healthcare, banking, retail, and most of them they were graduates or just below the graduate, and their income level they were earning were around 15,000 to 25,000 average income. And the 45% of all the reverse migrants belongs to blue collar jobs. So they were semi-skilled in plumbing, electrician, carpenter, masonry, and their education level was at least metric pass. And their average income they were earning were between 10,000 to 20,000. And there is a third, basically, our founder, Mr. Vijay Mahajan, Basics Social Enterprise Group founder, Mr. Vijay Mahajan, always say that there should be a third collar also for the unskilled worker. They are the daily wage workers, vegetable sellers, coolie, all these supporters. So he gave that all those workers as a gray collar. So there is and the 38% reverse migrants belong to the gray collar. They are unskilled, basically, workers. So in my view, the 38% and 45%, the person who are semi-skilled and unskilled are the target audience basically, and they are the potential producers or potential candidates to whom we need to think upon. And the study, if we can study those profiles, and we can build something around their own abilities and their own current attitudes, that will definitely give us a direction to where skilling need to move now. So one more data is 31% were the interstate migrants and 69% were the intrastate migrants. And as the March study says, 56% wanted to return back to their own industry and their own job places, and rest 44% were not clear. So our study says 21% definitely don't want to go back, and rest of the 23% are may return back, or they are confused. So 56%, as Dilip sir said, that we need to push all those 56% to go back and join their earlier jobs, and need to build something around on the 44% kind of community. And everybody knows that the few of the sectors has got a big hit, basically. The tourism industry, hospitality industry, manufacturing sector, some textile sector. So KPMG study says that 4.5 crore workers are right now working. Yeah, sorry, I got lost. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So out of 4.5 crore workers, 1 crore workers may, that job is at risk. So we need to think about all those workers who are working right now in textile sector, manufacturing. They were engaged in hospitality and tourism sector, but now this sector, the revival of these sectors will take around 2 to 3 years in coming times. So how can we reskill or give them alternate skill so that they can be engaged in these promising sector, which is the healthcare, IT, ITS, insurance, FMCG, logistics, and the most important, which already Mart team talked about, is the agriculture. So right now, the skill ecosystem of country and all the schemes run by the major ministries and departments are PMKVY, DDU-GKY, and CCOR Kamau from Ministry of Minority, and NULM. So all these 3-4 schemes are consisting around 85% of the total skill ecosystem funded by government. And all the schemes are being designed in the manner that they all are catering to the formal sector employment, which consists around less than 10% of the total workforce we have. So out of 46 crore of the workforce, we have only 4 crore of the workforce working in formal sector, or I can say organized sector. So there is a need, and nobody is talking about in skilling space is talking about the rest 42 crore of the workforce. How can we provide them skill, and how can we we harvest the ability and the number of people we have right now as a workforce. And Dilip sir rightly said about the 3D things. So demand, digital, design, digital, and delivery is giving a definitely very promising,
yes, Mr. Anand, just try to wind up this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, sorry, sir. So in Beable, we already started thinking about that, and we are building our business models around creating micro entrepreneurship and working on the innovative models where we can work with the agri-tech startups, where we can work with some digital startups to build their outreach in rural areas and providing skills and create non-migratory employment generation. And the framework given by Mr. Vijay Mahajan, is the best I have ever seen framework, which may be the solution of that, is the Well Done framework. Well Done consists for water, energy, land, livestock. Is Well Done is digital, organizing, non-farm, and e-commerce. So these are 8 areas. If we work around all those areas and can create some innovative models with help of some philanthropic organization, and slowly we need to start moving towards non-government, the complete today in today's scenario, the dependency of all skill ecosystem is on government funding. So now this is the time to move from from government funding, the dependency from government funding, to build your own products. You build your own models, business models, where philanthropic organizations and social impact bonds and your own user-funded skilling. How can you build these models to create user-funded skilling, so that these will be the sustainable? And skilling business today is completely dependent on the grants. But now we need to move. We need to build the skilling industry to become a sustainable and a business for for the organizations. So social impact bonds is again next promising thing, and they can yes, I will take 1 more minute. I'll more emphasizing on creating business models around the rural and town economy. So town economy is a new word basically we need to think about, and so creating all these models, we need to do a lot of pilots. And when I'm talking about lot of pilots, if you will do lot of pilots, 100 pilots, you will be successful in 7 to 8 or 10 models. So philanthropic organizations need to put their equity in put their funds in running lot of pilots. As we are in 2020 and we have only 20 years left to harvest the demographic dividend. We have 20 years left only. We have passed 40 years in building the ecosystem what we are here today. Now 20 years we need to act fast and create these business models, which will again further support all the to build the rural economy. Yes, I think I finished in 8 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vishal Singh. And I think we have got about 15 minutes time for question and answers. So I would just like to thank all the presentations, especially it started beautifully with Mr. Vijay Sahu's beautiful poem, I think, which set the tone, and Mr. Dilip Jana also giving an overall perspective, and the two skilling expert, Neeraj Agarwal and Vishal Singh, speaking more specifics into the actions required. Now, of the questions that are received, I think there is one question which is directly addressed to Mr. Dilip Chenoy. In adopting digital savvy culture, what do you think the availability of gadgets and its access to the last mile? I think, is it clear?
Yes. So actually, there are three things, and there's a question in the chat which I actually wanted to also address, right?
Yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Just 1 minute. Sorry. Yeah. So there's also a question in the chat that I wanted to address. You see, what has actually happened is that because schooling has gone online. Okay. Let me give you a personal example. I have the two people who actually stay with me. They both ask me, do I have an old phone which has video capability, because their children have to go online, right? Now the data where rural penetration has gone up, internet penetration has increased further thanks to this thing, and the rural data consumption has actually exceeded urban data connection. I think people are finding ways to do it, and I think for those who cannot afford digital connection, who cannot afford bandwidth, we have to find solutions. But in companies, it is not the CTO, the CEO who is actually leading the digital transformation. It is actually COVID which is leading the digital transformation. So like I said, when we are looking at Y2K, which actually positioned India today, if we take the advantage of COVID and look at the systems of direct benefit transfer, we are not spending on midday meals. So if we take the sum that we spend on midday meals and put that into enhancing digital connectivity and providing digital access to children. In fact, many years ago, there was this one laptop per child initiative. And, we had this initiative even launched by Government of India. So rather than seeing the glass as half empty, let's see the glass as half full and see what we can do to actually enable that to happen. Second, you see, what is happening is that earlier there was no mechanism to monitor whether the teacher was going into class, whether they were teaching, what they were doing. But with the digital experience, you can have a back-end system that actually enables that to happen. So rather than focusing on, whether the children have a 3-hour problem or whatever it is, let us focus our energy on how we can enable the digital ecosystem to deliver what we want. And, all the digital things can be recorded. Okay. Unlike a classroom, the classroom can never be recorded. A digital thing can be recorded. A student can always go back to that class to look at it at his or her own pace. So when I talked about the digital enablers and the tutors at the local level, they have to take this and then say, okay, how can we actually work with those guys, with the students who are not up to mark in the class? How can we teach them how to go back to the recording of the class, how to look at solving the issues, creating local people there? I mean, if we collectively work and spend the energies to say, okay, this is a great opportunity. I know it's a challenge, right? But this is a great opportunity to transform education at the grassroots, transform skilling at the level. Now, for example, you see, a lot of the migrant workers don't have a certificate and don't have a skill, right? If we do recognition of prior learning digitally and get them, they all, in India, there's a very, very important thing about migrant workers. They carry their own tools. So when they've gone back, they would have carried their own tools back. And digitally, you can actually do a recognition of prior learning, give them a certificate that will actually serve them when the whole economy comes back there, and the costs will be low. So my humble suggestion is, let us look at the glass as half empty. What can we do to make it full? And how can empower children and workers around the country and use this as an opportunity to really transform India going forward?
Yeah, I think it can't be better. I think you have really very eruditely put.
If I have 1 more minute, I actually want to answer one question, right?
Yeah.
I know there is this whole debate about formal and informal, right? But if you come down to it, if there's a formal carpenter and informal carpenter, there is no difference in his skills. It's only how he's employed. So what we need to do is actually map the type of jobs that are available in the different sectors, right? And enable that person to be skilled. Now, in the small and medium industry, right, there is a multi-skilling of person, but he can't be half a CNC operator, half a marketing person, half a raw material. He needs to be a full. So when we actually look at the skilling systems and we create these micro degrees where they can accumulate, then we are actually improving the productivity of an informal worker. The way he is employed is different, but the job that he does, you know, in any sector. And I have actually asked people to tell me if the informal skill is different from the formal skill, right? There might be a specialization and a higher level in the formal thing. There might be a multitasking at the informal level, and we need to cater for both of them. So I think we need to look at it that way. So thank you.
I think it's a very enriching reply you have given. I think if we know how to ask the right questions, we really can expand our knowledge. That was a very beautiful done. The next question, you know, which I would like to throw it open, I know who would be best to answer. I'm not quite sure. The question is, district and block level administration is not taking in faith social organizations, workers in most of the cases. How the livelihood of rural will be resolved in this context? I think this is the role of the government agencies or the government agents in this whole process. So who would like to take this up? Because I think this is a problem some of the people who really depend a lot on the government as a leverage also faces.
So can you repeat again, Mr. Hazarika, that question?
It says, you know, district and block level administration is not taking in faith social organizations and workers in most of the cases, and how the livelihood of rural will be resolved in this context, in context of the district and block level officials, you know, their role basically.
Yeah, so I think as I mentioned earlier, that the dependency on government machinery and government system, dependency on the government system and government machinery to do any social development is very high. And nobody, you know, the only innovation, if you need to create faith, you know, in your any social intervention or in your any social activity, you need to build some innovative ideas around that. And wherever you can say the lot of NGOs are having in very good books, and you know, and the government machinery is also admiring a lot of NGOs and a lot of social organizations where they are building something, they are creating impact, they are, you know, they are doing some impactful job on ground. So if you need to get them in confidence, and if you need to, you know, build your confidence of your government machinery at block level, district level, or state level, wherever, you need to create impact on ground. You need to innovate thing. You need to you know, you cannot go every time and do the conventional thing, what you were practicing last 20 years, and now again you are going back and okay, we are building SHGs, we are doing microfinance, we are doing this. You need to do all these activities in a new avatar. So what new you are, you know, proposing them will only build the confidence on ground.
Yeah, I think this is the last question. I'll quickly just go over it. As educational institute or training institutes are closed and no one knows when they're going to open, how reskilling will happen and what time it will take to really come on the ground, and what can be the best option for a trainer to overcome this problem. So I think they're saying that since the schools, etc., are closed, you know, is it possible to start the skilling process in such a setup in view of the uncertainty?
Dilip sir will be the best person to answer.
Yeah.
So I think Vishal mentioned two things in his address. One, that most of the government programs are actually closed. So there's no funding from there. The second point that he actually talked about, if I heard him correct, he said we have to move from a grant model to a sustainable model.
Yes, sir.
And I believe that today, when people have time on their hands, and I gave you that example of the English literature or the beautician or the chef that is actually teaching people there is an opportunity to create 1 billion skilling entrepreneurs in the country. And also there's an opportunity to use the digital space to do things that earlier were looked and frowned upon. You see, earlier, if I take the education space, there was, e-learning was prohibited, right? Now they have allowed universities to do e-learning. They've taken a full U-turn. Digital was not good. Now digital is the only way to do it. So I think that, if I look at, you must look at beauticians. They're actually teaching online. Chefs are teaching online. It is possible to actually do a lot of stuff online. The recognition of prior learning can be done online. I know that the Media Sector Skill Council is doing a lot of stuff online. The Food Processing Sector Skill Council is doing a lot of stuff. Many Sector Skill Councils are doing a lot of retail can be done entirely online. And Mr. Bijay Sahu used to chair that Sector Skill Council. So if you look at it, it is possible. And the entrepreneurs, again, should, I think, to become Atmanirbhar, right? We have to, be self-confident. If an individual becomes self-reliant and self-confident and looks at the digital opportunity going in here, and we can transform the skills ecosystem, we are in a situation where we can leapfrog, just like the mobile phone enabled us to leapfrog teledensity in the world and catch up with the world. This is an opportunity that skilling enterprises, NGOs, and others take place. For example, let me give you an example. You have rural shows here, right? And if rural shows were to create a network of all the, and someone talked about Odia chefs in another context that I was talking earlier. So if we connect all the migrant workers and who are good chefs, where are they located, right? And then we create and we say, okay, this food is available, special home cooked food available for delivery, right? Rural shows can actually create a new business. Other people can create a new business. So we, instead of just sitting and saying, my God, COVID is a calamity, right? I think we should look at COVID as a creative opportunity and see how we can collectively transform the lives of entire rural India. It is possible. It is an opportunity, not of a lifetime. It is an opportunity to make a generational shift. That is the opportunity here.
I think it's it's been a very enlightening session. As we are coming to the end, I would like to thank Mr. Bijay Sahu, Mr. Dilip Chinoy, Mr. Neeraj Agarwal, and Mr. Chelsea Amrawat, because they have brought in so many different perspectives. I'm sure, so to say, in such a short period of time, so many things have been explored. The participants will definitely brought in something, which I'm sure all the others, who are taking part in this webinar are going to really go back very enriched. And as I thank you all again, and then I also thank all the viewers, I would now request Pradeep Kashyap to just wind up and offer the vote of thanks. Pradeep Kashyap, please.
You're on mute. You have to mute. You have to unmute yourself, Pradeep.
Unmute, Pradeep.
Yeah, so I was saying thank you very much, Antikam. You've done a great moderation because you managed everything within time. And as you know, my habit is that we must finish on time. To begin with, I must say that this has been a very enriching session and a great learning session for me. And I have started taking Dalai Lama's advice very seriously, which is when you talk, you don't learn anything new, but when you listen, you learn much more. So for the last few months, I have now sort of taken a back seat and my learning curve has gone up. I must thank each of the panelists for providing an aspect of the whole ecosystem, with Dilip, of course, talking at the macro level and the others talking more at the micro level. So there's a dovetailing of the two. I think there are one or two fundamental things in my mind. One is that rural India is all about self-employment. See, we cannot look at it from an urban lens because the salaried class percentage is much, much higher in urban India. If I take rural India, agriculture, employing 40-45% of our total workforce, is most of it, the owners, 110 million farmers, are self-employed. So the model that will really work is self-employment. The second point is what Dilip said is about demand generation. He talked about how once the demand came up for PPEs and for masks and others, the ventilators, how everybody got down to task and they have provided the solutions. This has been my experience of working with self-help groups for 25 years now, that every time we could provide an order to the self-help group, everything else fell in place. So you don't have to talk about upskilling, because if they feel that the order requires upskilling, they'll do it themselves. If the carpenter feels that he's not able to compete in terms of productivity with his old-fashioned tools, and if he needs to get electric tools, then he will do it. Okay? So I think we have to leave the solutions in the hands of the entrepreneurs. Okay? And I think we've got a recipe of what we need to do. Now we should just go out there and Nike says, let's do it. So that's what I would leave with this thought, that now let's get down to doing it. We've got a lot of models, we've got a lot of experience. And in my own case, I feel so old now that for 30 years, I've been hearing the same things. And I don't know if there's been very much change happening. So I think now as a nation, we just need to put our heads together and say, okay, we're just going to do it. Okay. So thank you very much once again, each one of you, for spending so much time with us and sharing your gyan. And I'm sure the participants are enriched. And a special thanks to you, Shantikam, for conducting this session. As I said, I wanted to introduce you that Shantikam and I are batchmates from BITS Pilani, and he was the bright one who then made it to IIM Ahmedabad, and of course then went on to become the secretary of the Assam Education Board and whatever. But we are still in touch, and tonight we have a common, we are part of a common webinar again. So whatever little brains are left, we're trying to share that with society. Thank you very much, all of you, once again. Great session. And a great time spent together.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you. And
Thank you.
just do it.
Thank you.
That's the mantra. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you.
Really a pleasure.
Great meeting you, and
Thank
hope we can meet physically also. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. I must catch up with you, Dilip, when I am back in Delhi.
Anytime. You can even catch up virtually, no problem.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Because we'll talk about our association at the Rural Marketing Association with FICCI. The first rural marketing seminar we did jointly was with FICCI.
Oh, okay.
In 2003 and 2004, for 2 years when Amit was the
let's redo it now.
Yes, we'd love to do it. Okay. Take care.
Okay.
God bless.
Now to all of you, take care, please.
Thank you, Mr.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Pleasure meeting you.
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure meeting.
Thank you.